James here. Now I'm going to try and make this video not too harsh because I know Jey Uso already has a lot of critics out there. But then, actually forget that, I am going to be harsh on Jey Uso because the thing I hated most about Survivor Series War Games, as I would say, and not that the show was that bad, it was just so treading water with no consequence. It was a 4 out of 10, 5 out of 10 show. But the thing that I hated more than anything else, apart from the fact that the War Games matches went longer than Martin Scorsese's The Irishman film.
And I gotta tell you, The Irishman was a great film, but it certainly was very long. And everybody, this is a reaction video. Make sure to subscribe, like, and share. And here we go. Comment, here we go, if you're ready. Boom.
It was actually when the babyfaces had the advantage in the men's War Games match, and just before Brock Lesnar came out and they had all the heels down. I say the advantage, it was 4-on-4 at that point, but all the babyfaces had all the heels down. There was like a minute and a half, 2 minutes left before Brock Lesnar turned up, and instead of making sure that all the heels stayed down so they weren't attacked, Jey Uso then looks into the camera, and I know it's all scripted and it's all planned out to, you know, the millisecond these days.
Yep.
Turns around to the camera and goes, that thing that I absolutely, at one point I had no opinion on, to like around like March, April time, to I now hate that more than anything else on WWE TV. And then they play the entrance music again, they do the yeeting, they bounce up and down in the middle.
Are you tired of the yeeting with the Usos, especially Jey Uso? Are you tired of it? Let me know.
Of a War Games match. Now, aside from the fact, and I'll mention this again, it completely trivializes, not that the entire booking and the reason for the match happening doesn't trivialize War Games as well, but it completely trivializes what is meant to be a feud-ending stipulation of violence and, you know, hatred and that kind of thing, to basically a bunch of fan service created by corporate people in suits. And I hate it. It's the thing I hate more probably on WWE television more than anything else if we're talking about individual things. And man, did that one get to me. So the logic break here is too much for me, and I know what they're going for. They're going for the Royal Rumble 2000 bit where all three members of Too Cool were in the ring and then they all do the dance. But there is a big difference between three friends doing a dance with no bad guys around, and then Rikishi, who is Jey Uso's father, throws out his two partners because it's every man for himself. And then what?
See, I actually lived through seeing that Royal Rumble. I saw that happen live, and I remember my friends and I watching it were like, no, Rikishi, throwing out Too Cool. But they understood the rules.
This was. Now, WWE's version of War Games, especially this year for both matches, and that's its own problem that there's two War Games matches on a single show, because it means that we have to have two of the same stipulation. You're worn out after the first one, especially when that's the opening match as well. And once again, I've said this before, it is a stipulation that requires a match, not a match that requires a stipulation. That's the problem with so many of these annual events. Not the Royal Rumble, that's got a reason, but Elimination Chamber, Money in the Bank, War Games. They are matches that, quite frankly, don't require stipulations because it's not the end of a feud. It's just a stopgap to get to the next day, and it completely waters down the concept of, specifically in this case, War Games. And you can also say that things like Io Sky's dive off the top of the cage at the end with a bin on her head is watered down, because I think that was the fourth time she's done it, at least 3 times in consecutive War Games. I think I'm right.
I'm pretty sure James is right. I'm pretty sure it was 3 consecutive. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments section. But be nice, damn it.
Insane. And I know she did it during the COVID days as well, off the top of the cage.
Yep.
So everything just gets more redundant and whatever, but I will get to Jey Uso in a minute, bear with me. But the thing that was really annoying about War Games, apart from that spot, is just how inconsequential everything was. But once again, I will get to Jey Uso. So to make the men's match feel even more inconsequential, then Jey Uso stops the match to do a bouncy dance halfway through. And again, it just hit me. Man, I'm sick of Jey Uso on TV. And it's I don't know if it's just the booking of him or him himself or whatever it is, but I just find Jey Uso to be the person who is most overpushed in the company and who I forward through their segments every single time. Now, as a character, let's go back to the beginning of the year. I've just always merely put up with Jey Uso. I don't particularly relate to him.
I got to meet Jey Uso by accident in my town in 2016. Him and Roman Reigns were eating privately at this little sushi place in my town. And I was sitting with my girlfriend, and I'm like, yo, I think that's Jey Uso and Roman Reigns. And she was like, oh my God, it really does look like them. I ended up getting to talk to Jey Uso for a few minutes. I took a picture with him. And he was a really cool guy. He was a very chill dude. And he was like, oh, we're taking selfies, you know? But as a character, like, I've never really liked the Usos, you know? Again, it has nothing to do with him as a person. It just, I'm not really into the characters, you know? Just an opinion, that's all.
Not particularly a fan of him. I'm not particularly, or wasn't particularly not a fan of him. He was just there. And I always felt, you know, he was pushed to his ability. Some would say beyond his ability, but I'll get to that in a minute, because that all relates to the Unreal reality show, which is kind of, you know, half a misnomer right there. But once again, he was pushed in 2025 over certain other wrestlers that I find far more engaging, whether it be Gunther, CM Punk, whoever it might be. Now, to tell you how I got to this point where I just don't want to see Jey Uso on my television, let's go back to the beginning of the year. So Jey was someone at the beginning of 2025 that was the right person at the right time. He was building momentum through 2024. Let's not talk about that awful brother versus brother match at WrestleMania 40. That was absolutely horrendous. But throughout that year, he was building and building, getting himself more popular. He had the catchphrase, he had the entrance music.
Look, he had everything. He checked the boxes. That's what it's all about in really any profession, especially wrestling. You always got to check all the boxes of things that you need to have and things that you need to be, and the expectations that the audience and fans hold you to. You know what I mean? And if you're still watching, comment, still watching. Very grateful. Thank you.
Some people would say, I would say rightly, well, I don't know, I would say rightly, of course, but I know many of you would argue differently, that Jey Uso was not the right person to win the Royal Rumble in 2025. But the thing is, once again, the fans were behind him. You kind of got to strike while the iron's hot. He was in the right place at the right time, and I actually commend Triple H for taking a genuine risk to elevate Jey Uso and once again strike while the iron's hot and give a genuine underdog a chance to win the Royal Rumble 1 year, because at least you can do it these years. There are 2 heavyweight titles. Go for the less important heavyweight title, and then obviously, and then that can open night 1, and then the real heavyweight title, which was Cody's. Yes, it was Cody's until of course Travis Scott interfered. That's the actual main event of night 2. Now, there are a couple of major issues with Jey Uso, even from that point, that people were pointing out. So, yes, he had the Yeet catchphrase, he was selling a ton of merchandise, and the kids in the crowd were getting behind him with the dance and the music. But most important...
Right, that was the thing also, the dance and the music that they were pushing so much, because it was working. You know, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But apparently a lot of people don't feel that way, you know?
Importantly, it was the entrance. That was what made him most popular, and all the fans dancing in unison. But just to remind people, the Yeet wasn't even his catchphrase at first. It was actually Jimmy Uso who said that first on television, who wore the gear first on television around 2021. Once again, 2024 is a big year for Jey Uso, and then just about...
Because everybody was saying Yeet in 2020, like right before the pandemic and then during. Everyone was saying, yeet it, don't need it. If you're still watching, comment, yeet it, no, yeet it, don't need it. And let's just see if we can hit the 1 like goal. Just 1 measly like. That's all we're asking for. Thank you if you did.
the most worn wrestling related paraphernalia on the show in 2024 as well. When I
Right.
went to Philadelphia last year, everybody was wearing his merch, and I thought that was really, really eye-opening, because I hadn't realised how popular he was until you kind of see it with your own eyes. But
Right.
Jey already had knocks against him at that point. Not only the WrestleMania 40 match, but his physique is merely serviceable, nothing posterized kind of thing. But he did have a good look, good for wrestling dress sense with the sunglasses and everything. But here's the thing, he got winded easily. He's never been that great in the ring, or, for me, an entertaining enough wrestler, and his spear and tippy-tappy super kicks are among the absolute shittiest in the business. And I include in the spear Charlotte Flair's with that. That's how bad Jey Uso's spear is. And it's something that you can't, for me, suspend disbelief for. But anyway, once again, I didn't have too much of an opinion either way at the beginning of the year. But to make matters worse, in the run-up to WrestleMania, he was under the WWE microscope, started making mistakes in the run-up to the big show, including, if you remember, when he tried to do the dive over the ropes, he was too tired, and he basically flop-dollared himself over the way. It was Flop Dollar Part 2. Now,
I remember
more than all that for me, it's hard for me to sort of get invested in someone who is a tag team specialist wrestler, who is a twin brother, then all of a sudden becoming a viable singles main event star on the Raw brand. It's just, I'm just simply not buying it, as he just been elevated that much beyond sort of where I saw his level was. And the story with Jey Uso. He won at WrestleMania, he defeated Gunther clean, and then they did the big WrestleMania moment where everybody danced in the crowd to the entrance music. The TKO types got the production, the footage of it all for future years to be played at as, a WrestleMania moment. And that's basically what it was for. But ultimately, at that point in WrestleMania, I think WWE made the right call. Now, then
Look, a lot of people may argue with what James is saying about TKO making the right call, but at the end of the day, it's just one person's opinion versus another. Really, at the end of the day, there is no right or wrong. It's just a matter of how you feel. You know what I mean?
KO apparently clearly wanted to recreate the WrestleMania moment of playing the theme song and having the crowd dance over and over and over again. Now, at some point, it went from, hey, that's a cool visual, to, hey, I wish this idiot would just get on with whatever he's supposed to be doing, whether it's the promo, the wrestling match, whatever it might be. Right. But unfortunately for Jey Uso, and long-time followers, I say long-time, this channel's not been out that much, that long, for this young channel, is, if you know me, you'll know one of my biggest bugbears is dragging out segments, whether it be, once again, angles, storylines, backstage segments, dreary promos with everyone droning on, matches, and especially entrances. Because they're being dragged out artificially, because a terminally bankrupt WWE booking committee is struggling to fill up the 2.5, 2 hours, 45, 3 hours that they themselves insist Raw should go every single night, or every single week.
Right.
And it's just filler. It's just annoying. It is the most skippable thing on the show, are the long entrances. And Jey Uso.
That's why I don't watch WWE like this anymore. I just get all my information from all the YouTube channels, from what I'm reading on social media, because the product I just can't watch. For me, let's put it this way, everything after like mid-2003, when The Rock and Stone Cold left the company, that was when WWE peaked, and the decline started when John Cena joined, and it became all about John Cena. When it was like the John Cena, Batista, Triple H era, like Evolution, that's when things started going downhill.
Is about as guilty as anybody else, including Roman Reigns, but at least he's not on television every single week. Now, the entrance is great for the house. That's fine. But when you're watching every single week at home, nothing changes. every single time. You do the entrance, then you do the stupid play it again Sam thing, and then I just lost interest really, really quickly in it. And because Raw is, once again, 35 minutes worth of matches and over 2 hours of filler, it just becomes a giant annoyance to me and the most redundant part of every single show. So, while my precious life has been sapped away, or it would be if I wasn't forwarding through 10 minutes just to get to the point, I mean, I could be watching, for example, actual wrestling on a wrestling show. I mean, never has wrestling, and this is more of a WWE-wide issue, is that never has wrestling been less important in wrestling. It's all about, and people will make this argument, that people actually pay their extortionate ticket prices for WWE for the entrances. Well, that might be so for...
But why are you going to a wrestling show for the entrances? So you can dance with the entrances? Like, it's like, what the hell has happened to wrestling? What happened? What happened to the 7-foot monsters that come to the ring and destroy each other for entertainment? That's what we wanted to see. Not people dancing down the ramp off the stage. Like, are you kidding me?
Some people, but I still say for the majority, they actually want action. And
right.
That is not what you get. Now,
exactly.
When Uso lost the title back to Gunther, it felt almost random, but I think the point is that it was Goldberg's retirement and it was Gunther versus Goldberg, and they wanted it for the World Heavyweight Championship for whatever reason. I don't think it made it any more or less important. Now, I don't want to... I sort of just figured that at that point the Jey Uso experiment was over, because I still never saw him on the Gunther, Punk, Seth Rollins, etc. level. I don't really see him on the Bron Breakker level at this point either, because I always thought he was a very beatable champion, temporarily filling a position because people like the catchphrase, aka I thought he was over pushed for what he could bring to the table. Now, once again, he's an okay wrestler, he's an okay promo when he has motivation beyond the catchphrase. But once again, the spear's terrible, the super kicks are just way overdone, and they look really, really weak as well. I've not really seen him for a long time, forever, as a main event star on the level of some of the people I mentioned, your Drew McIntyre's, your Brock Lesnar's especially, your Cody Rhodes, etc. Now, before we get to that, let's go to Survivor Series, and that's when it's really hitting me. That damn am I sick of the yeet dancing, especially when it's taking so much away from the match, where you just don't need any more reasons to take away from a War Games match with no massive... I mean, it was a decent match, but, you know, there was not tons of heat going into it, and there was no consequences at the end. Yes, the masked man turned up at the end, but that's by the by. Now, it's the epitome of WWE in 2025. Bland, pre-scripted, and I'm talking the Jey Uso bit there, bland pre-scripted catchphrases approved by committee just to be printed on t-shirts to churn out in their tens of thousands. No real punch to it, no real organic...
Look, at the end of the day, WWE is a business. They're gonna do what makes them most money, not what the fans want. I know that sounds weird. Where it was more about the fans in the 90s and early 2000s. You know? Do you guys get what I mean?
Field. Yes, I know all wrestling at all times, from the 2000s onwards especially, everything is micromanaged to death. But, yep. I mean, at some points, in the older days, you could suspend disbelief, I guess is just the easiest way of saying it. And now it's just hard. It just gets harder to do that every single...
Like, for instance, that time when Batista got fined all that money because he bladed himself and was bleeding on TV and he wasn't supposed to. Like, he broke Vince's rules. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, I really want to as well. Now, for most people, let's go to the WWE Raw. I don't know why I said for most people. I was thinking of something else. So let's go to Raw on Monday. Jey Uso has a little crash out after he loses clean to LA Knight in the Last Time Is Now tournament, and then he flips over the Prime hydration station, struggles picking up the stairs, which I found quite funny. It's weird because I actually saw a video of Ahmed Johnson picking up the stairs and launching them at where Goldust was like a second beforehand. I was like, damn, that's really scary. But the way Jey Uso did, like,
I know exactly which clip he's talking about with Ahmed Johnson and Goldust. It was terrifying how close Goldust was to getting hit with the stairs.
So it didn't quite have the impact of a Bret Hart style crash out like after he did after Montreal. But anyway, I was thinking about this. So normally I would say that's what I was going to get at. For most people, if their character is getting stale, then a heel turn or a babyface turn or whatever it might be is a decent way of going about things. Then I thought about this. If Jey Uso does turn heel, I'm still not interested in him wrestling anybody else either on the babyface side. It doesn't matter if he wrestles anybody on the heel side or the babyface side. I'm just not interested. And I blame, if nothing else, WWE for that, for overexposing Jey Uso to the point that he's there every single week doing the exact same thing, wrestling the exact same matches. And I just don't relate to him. And it was fine at the beginning of the year. But once again, we're now at the end of the year. And this also goes to another criticism of WWE, is that nothing ever changes. It's like the roster from 2020.
This has also been a huge problem. Even when I was watching again briefly in 2014, 15, and 16, for like that 2 years I was watching on and off, and it was always the same boring BS. Especially when Daniel Bryan was doing the yes movement. That was one of the most annoying things ever.
Practically at the end of 2023 is the same as 2025. It's 2 years of almost the exact same content. And once again, Jey Uso epitomizes that major problem where every single week you have the exact same entrance with the exact same let's do it again. And it just eats up 10 minutes of my time, where Raw is, I mean, it's bad enough as it is, because Raw is not last week, because it did still go over 20 minutes, but every other week beforehand, it's been nearly half an hour or even beyond half an hour before an actual bell is rung and a wrestling match takes place. And once again, this is more of a thing about WWE's issues, but Jey Uso is the epitome of those issues. The overdone, overpushed, do the exact same thing every single week. And once again, if he turns heel, I don't care. I think it's actually got to the point where he just needs to be a tag team wrestler again with Jimmy, and at least bolster the tag team division. Because as good as the AJ Styles Dragon Lee match with New Day was on Monday, they still feel like a makeshift team, and there needs to be more serious teams in the tag team division that I think Jay and Jimmy could really help bolster and, you know, add some credibility to that division. But ultimately, I'd like to see Jay not in the main event, despite the fact he's called Main Event Jey Uso, or was at least, because that's another thing that I really hate about WWE. This whole let's come up with a nickname, let's call creative services, let's see what they come up with. I mean, the one that gets me the most is the Genius of the Sky. That is the most designed by committee, horrendous, quick, let's trademark it before nobody else thinks of it, nickname that they have to repeat over and over and over again. Oh, Rhea Bloody Ripley. There's so many of them. But anyway, that's just, you know, that's just the corporate
Rhea Bloody Ripley,
soul-sucking pro wrestling in 2025, I guess it is. So anyway, we've had, once again, I think I've said all this. Oh, I actually did say this on Dutch's show, apart from generally the shows are so stale and stagnant, is that there's so little turnover in talent. I think I mentioned that as well. So I'm just going back through my notes. I think that's pretty much it. But back to Raw, LA Knight at least caught the clean win. And he's somebody, conversely from Jey Uso, that I think you can't really, I mean, you probably could eventually, but he is someone who's relatively immune to overexposure. And the reason that LA Knight is immune to overexposure and Jey Uso absolutely isn't, is because he can get himself over in 1 minute, do a little promo, hit his catchphrase, go to the ring, do his match, be entertaining in the match, have a bit of swagger and personality that feels a bit more gritty and raw and real than Jey Uso's ultra glossy presentation. And I'm real.
And that's another thing that modern day wrestling is. It's so polished. It's so high definition. It's so perfect looking. And that's appreciated. It's appreciated. You know, the effort is there. They really try and put on a holy shit performance. But what made the old days of wrestling so great was the grittiness. The grittiness of the arena and the ring and the ramp and the stage and everything. Like, you know, the pyro and like, it was just different. You know, it was more extreme.
Happy that he got to the finals. I can't wait to see how he's beaten by Gunther on SmackDown on Friday, which I think where the finals are. But once again, like, there's Jey Uso on one side that I just think I'm sick of seeing you, and then there are people like LA Knight and, for example, Drew McIntyre that I think are relatively, because they are interesting enough and it feels like they throw enough of their own stuff in there and their own personality that it makes me gravitate towards them more. So less Jey Uso, more your LA Knights and Drew McIntyre. I think there's two of the few people in WWE that have not got stale yet, despite being on television every single week. So please let me know what you think in the comments of my opinions on Jey Uso. Do you think I'm not being harsh enough? Do you think I'm being too harsh? Am I pretty much on the money? Let me know why. Please like and subscribe.
Look, I think he's right on the money. Honestly, I really do. Like I said, no hate to Jey Uso or Jimmy Uso. I think they're cool people. Like I said, I met Jay. He was a very cool person. I've just never really been into their character, you know. But yet, I was a huge Rikishi fan. I was a huge Dwayne Johnson, The Rock fan. I even liked Roman Reigns in the early days with the Shield. You know, it just, the Usos were just too much, too over the top, too in your face for me. But it's just an opinion. What's yours? Let me know in the comments. Make sure to subscribe to James Romero's channel. Links are in the description down below. Make sure you check out all those links down there. And let's see if we can just get one like on this video. And if you're new here, one subscriber with tapping the bell. Till next time, keep watching that wrestling. We'll keep talking about it and reacting. And if you don't like it, we got 2 words for you. Subscribe.